911, what's your emergency? Oh God, the lions. Jack's in there with them and there's blood everywhere. Please send help. Please. Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. Where are you located? Rayner's Big Cat Sanctuary. Highway 47. Please hurry. They're eating him. In the scorching heat of an August afternoon in rural Texas, what began as a routine feeding would become one of the most horrific big cat attacks in American history. The temperature had climbed to 103 degrees that day, creating waves of heat that shimmered off the metal fencing of Rayner's Big Cat Sanctuary, 30 miles outside of Austin. Jack Rayner was 52 years old, a man who had dedicated the last 23 years of his life to what he called God's most magnificent predators. He'd built his sanctuary from nothing, transforming 47 acres of scrubland into what he proudly proclaimed was Texas's premier private lion facility. That morning, he'd posted on Facebook, "Another beautiful day in paradise with my babies. Remember folks, lions aren't pets, they're family." He had no idea that within 4 hours, those same babies would turn on him in an attack so savage that even hardened first responders would struggle to process what they found. This is Jack Rayner's story. A story of unconditional love for the world's most dangerous predators, a lifetime of defying the odds, and the moment when nature's most fundamental law, that apex predators will always be apex predators, finally collected its due. What you're about to hear isn't just another animal attack story. It's a cautionary tale about the thin line between courage and delusion, between respect and fatal familiarity. You're watching Animal Attack Files, where we bring you the most shocking real-life animal encounters caught on record. If this story grips you, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon, because what you're about to witness will change how you see exotic animal ownership forever. And trust me, after hearing what happened to Jack Rayner on that sweltering August afternoon, you'll never look at a lion the same way again. The sanctuary sat isolated on a dusty stretch of Highway 47, surrounded by nothing but mesquite trees and dried yellow grass. It wasn't open to the public. Jack ran it as a private rescue facility, taking in lions that zoos couldn't keep, circus animals past their prime, and big cats confiscated from people who thought they could raise a lion cub in their suburban backyard. On that particular Thursday, August 18, 2022, the only people on the property were Jack, his assistant Maria Gonzalez, and a volunteer named Tom Bradley who was fixing a section of perimeter fencing nearly a quarter-mile from the main compound. At 2:47 p.m., security cameras captured Jack entering the main lion enclosure carrying a wheelbarrow loaded with 80 pounds of raw beef. He was wearing his usual uniform, khaki shorts, a faded blue "Lions Need Love Too" t-shirt, and the same worn leather boots he'd had for 15 years. No protective gear. No backup. No tranquilizer gun. Just Jack and his unwavering belief that the 5 adult lions in that enclosure, 3 males and 2 females, saw him as one of their. The largest of those lions was Caesar, a 500-pound male with a distinctive black mane who Jack had hand-raised from a 3-week-old cub. In hundreds of social media videos, Jack could be seen wrestling with Caesar, scratching his belly, even putting his head inside the massive cat's mouth. "See how gentle he is?" Jack would tell his followers. "This is what happens when you raise them with love instead of fear." But on this afternoon, something was different. The security footage would later show Caesar pacing the fence line, his tail twitching in sharp, aggressive movements. The other lions were clustered in the far corner of the enclosure, their bodies tense, their eyes fixed on something outside the camera's view. And the temperature, that merciless Texas heat, had been baking the metal feeding platforms where the lions typically ate, making them too hot to touch. Jack entered through the double-gated safety entrance, a system he'd bragged about designing himself. He pushed the wheelbarrow toward the feeding area, calling out in his familiar sing-song voice, "Dinner time, babies. Who's hungry?" The cameras show him bending down to grab the first chunk of meat. They show him turning his back to Caesar for exactly 3 seconds. And they show the moment when 23 years of luck ran out, and the king of beasts reminded everyone why they've ruled at the top of the food chain for millions of years. Jack Rayner wasn't just another exotic animal owner with more money than sense. He was a third-generation rancher from Bastrop County, Texas, who'd grown up understanding the delicate balance between human and animal, predator and prey. Born in 1970 to Robert and Ellen Rayner, Jack spent his childhood on a 500-acre cattle ranch where his grandfather taught him that respect for animals wasn't optional, it was survival. "My boy was different from the start," Ellen Rayner would later tell investigators, her voice breaking with grief. "Other kids were scared of our bull, little Jack would climb the fence just to pet him. He'd say the animals talked to him, told him what they needed. We thought it was cute back then." Jack's fascination with big cats began at age 7 when his father took him to the San Antonio Zoo. While other children cowered behind their parents as the lions roared, Jack pressed his small face against the glass, mesmerized. "Dad, they're sad," he'd whispered. "They don't belong in there." That night, he announced at dinner that he would someday give lions a better home. His family laughed. Jack never forgot. After graduating from Bastrop High School in 1988, where he'd been known as Animal Jack for constantly rescuing injured wildlife, Jack surprised everyone by enrolling in Texas A&M's veterinary program. But formal education felt like a cage to him. He dropped out after 2 years, choosing instead to work at various wildlife facilities across the Southwest, learning from anyone who would teach him about big cat behavior, nutrition, and care. In 1996, at age 26, Jack met Sarah Chen at a wildlife rehabilitation seminar in Phoenix. Sarah was a veterinary student who shared Jack's passion for predator conservation. They married 2 years later in a ceremony held, naturally, at a big cat rescue facility in Colorado. Sarah understood Jack's calling, even if she didn't always agree with his methods. Believed fear was the enemy of understanding, Sarah would reflect years later. He thought if you approached any animal, no matter how dangerous, with pure love and respect, they would never hurt you. The couple settled in Austin, where Jack worked at the Austin Zoo while secretly saving every penny for his dream. Sarah established a successful veterinary practice, and by 1999, they'd saved enough for a down payment on the scrubland that would become Rayner's big cat sanctuary. Their daughter, Emma, was born that same year. Promised Sarah he'd be careful, that he'd never take unnecessary risks. It was a promise he'd break thousands of times. Friends described Jack as charismatic, stubborn, and utterly fearless. Marcus Thompson, who'd known Jack for 15 years, recalls watching him break up a fight between 2 male lions using nothing but a water hose. And his voice. A normal person would have been terrified. Jack walked in there like he was separating 2 house cats. To say, "No, I'm the alpha. They respect the hierarchy." We thought he was invincible. But it was Jack's social media presence that truly revealed his philosophy and his dangerous delusions. Starting in 2015, Jack began posting daily videos on YouTube and Facebook, amassing over 800,000 followers who tuned in to watch him interact with his babies. In one viral video with 12 million views, Jack lay down in the middle of 5 adult lions while they groomed him. "See how they accept me as family?" he said to the camera. "This is what happens when you raise them with boundaries made of love, not electric fences." Dr. Patricia Hawkins, an animal behavioral specialist at the University of Texas, had publicly criticized Jack's approach multiple times. Mr. Rayner was promoting extremely dangerous interactions as if they were normal, she stated in a 2021 interview. He anthropomorphized these animals to a degree that was not just unscientific, but potentially fatal. Lions are not dogs. They're not cats. They're apex predators with millions of years of evolutionary programming that can't be overwritten by hand-feeding them as cubs. Jack's response to such criticism was always the same. He'd post another video of himself playing with Caesar or one of his other lions, often adding captions like, "The experts say this is impossible. Love says otherwise." His followers ate it up, calling him the real-life Lion King and Dr. Dolittle of big cats. The more experts warned, the bolder Jack became. By 2022, Jack was caring for 23 big cats, 14 lions, 6 tigers, and 3 leopards. He knew each one's name, their favorite foods, their personalities. He delivered some of them himself, bottle-fed them, slept beside their enclosures when they were sick. His sanctuary operated on donations and Sarah's veterinary income, every dollar going back into the animals' care. Jack paid himself nothing, saying his payment was the privilege of living among nature's most perfect predators. Yet those who knew Jack best would later say that in the months before his death, something had changed. He'd become more reckless, entering enclosures without following his own safety protocols, dismissing Sarah's increasingly urgent concerns. It was like he believed his own myth, Marcus Thompson observed. Like he'd forgotten that no matter how much you love them, no matter how long you've known them, a lion is still a lion. African lions are among nature's most perfectly designed killing machines. Males can weigh up to 550 pounds, possess bite forces of 650 pounds per square inch, and can take down prey weighing over 1,000 pounds. In the wild, they live in complex social structures called prides, where dominance is established through violence and maintained through fear. They are not, despite what Disney movies suggest, cuddly oversized house cats waiting for the right human to unlock their gentle nature. The 5 lions in the main enclosure at Rayner's Big Cat Sanctuary represented a artificially created pride, a dangerous mixing of bloodlines and personalities that would never occur in nature. At the center of this group was Caesar, the undisputed king of Jack's sanctuary. Caesar wasn't just any lion, he was a Barbary lion mix, a subspecies known for their enormous size and distinctive black manes. At 8 years old and 500 pounds, Caesar was in his prime, the equivalent of a 35-year-old professional athlete at peak physical condition. Jack had acquired Caesar under circumstances that should have been a warning. In 2014, a roadside zoo in Oklahoma was shut down for numerous violations, their animals dispersed to facilities across the country. Caesar, then just 8 weeks old, had already been labeled aggressive and unmanageable by his previous handlers. When Jack arrived to evaluate him, the cub was isolated in a concrete cell, snarling at anyone who approached. "He's a bad seed," the facility manager warned. "Born mean. You'd be better off with one of the others." But Jack saw something different. He spent 6 hours sitting outside Caesar's cage, talking softly, occasionally tossing pieces of chicken through the bars. By the end of the day, the cub was eating from his hand. He wasn't mean, Jack would later tell his YouTube followers. He was scared. There's a difference. Jack brought Caesar home that night, beginning an 8-year relationship that would ultimately end in tragedy. For the first 3 years, Caesar seemed to validate Jack's philosophy. Videos from that period show a playful, affectionate lion who followed Jack around like a golden retriever, slept beside him on a specially reinforced couch, and even allowed Jack's daughter Emma to ride on his back. The sanctuary's Facebook page was flooded with comments, calling their bond magical and proof that love conquers all. But experts who reviewed the footage saw something else entirely. Dr. Kevin Richardson, a renowned wildlife behaviorist who had studied the videos as part of a documentary on exotic pet ownership, noted multiple warning signs. You can see Caesar's body language changing around year 4. The way he watches Rayner, the tension in his shoulders when Rayner turns his back, the increasing frequency of what we call testing behaviors, small acts of aggression to probe for weakness. These are classic precursors to an attack. The problems intensified when Jack introduced 4 more lions to Caesar's enclosure in 2019. 2 were females, Sheba and Nala, rescued from a defunct circus in Mexico. The other 2 were young males, Thor and Apollo, confiscated from a drug dealer's compound in Houston. Jack's decision to house them all together violated every principle of big cat management. You're creating a powder keg, Dr. Sarah Hartman from the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries warned him during an inspection. Caesar has been the only male for years. Introducing younger males into his territory is asking for violence. Jack's response was typical. He posted a video of all 5 lions eating peacefully side by side, captioned, "The experts said they'd kill each other. Love said otherwise. Day 1 of our new pride family." What the video didn't show were the 3 fights that had broken out earlier that day, requiring Jack to use fire hoses and air horns to separate the animals. Or the deep claw marks on Thor's flank where Caesar had asserted his dominance. Over the next 3 years, the sanctuary's volunteers logged 47 incidents involving the 5 lions. These ranged from minor scuffles over food to full-blown attacks that left Thor with a permanently damaged rear leg. Jack dismissed each one as family squabbles and refused to separate the animals. "They're working out their hierarchy," he'd insist. "It's natural. They'll settle down." But the lions weren't settling down. They were becoming increasingly unpredictable, their behavior influenced by factors Jack either ignored or didn't understand. The Texas heat, which regularly exceeded 100 degrees in summer, made them irritable and aggressive. Their diet, primarily cheap beef supplemented with chicken and pork, lacked crucial nutrients found in wild prey. The constant stream of visitors Jack brought to show off his babies created chronic stress. And most dangerously, the presence of Sheba and Nala, both of whom were entering estrus cycles, was triggering increasingly violent competition between the 3 males. Maria Gonzalez, Jack's assistant, had documented her concerns in a series of emails to the sanctuary's board of directors. "Mr. Rayner refuses to acknowledge the danger," she wrote in June 2022. "Yesterday, Caesar charged him during feeding. Mr. Rayner laughed it off as playfulness, but I saw Caesar's eyes. That wasn't play. That was hunting behavior." The situation deteriorated further in the 2 weeks before the attack. The temperature had been above 100 degrees for 10 straight days. A donation shortfall meant the lions were eating lower quality meat than usual, and Sheba was in full estrus, driving all 3 males into a frenzy of territorial aggression. Volunteers reported hearing roars and snarls throughout the night, finding tufts of bloodied fur along the fence line each morning. On August 16, just 2 days before the attack, veterinarian Dr. Michael Torres visited for a routine inspection. The report, filed posthumously, painted a disturbing picture. Caesar displaying hypervigilance and resource guarding behaviors. Recommended immediate separation from other males. Jack Rayner declined, stating, "Caesar's just feeling his. He'll calm down when the heat breaks." Dr. Torres added a handwritten note at the bottom, "I've been doing this for 30 years. That lion is going to kill someone." In the 14 days leading up to August 18, 2022, everyone around Jack Rayner seemed to sense impending disaster, everyone except Jack himself. The signs were impossible to ignore. Caesar had begun exhibiting what animal behaviorists call barrier frustration, pacing the fence line for hours, his massive paws wearing deep grooves in the dirt. His eyes, once warm amber when looking at Jack, had taken on a cold, calculating quality that made volunteers unconsciously step back from the enclosure. The changes weren't subtle. On August 5, during the morning feeding, Caesar had done something he'd never done. In 8 years, he'd growled at Jack. Not a playful rumble, but a deep, guttural warning that made every hair on Maria Gonzalez's arms stand up. Jack just laughed, Maria later recalled. He said Caesar was being grumpy because of the beef. But I saw Caesar's body coiled like a spring, ready to launch. That wasn't grumpiness. That was a predator giving a final warning. Dr. Patricia Hawkins returned to the sanctuary on August 10 after receiving a concerned call from Maria. Her official report documented alarming observations. Caesar exhibited classic pre-attack behaviors: tail lashing, fixed staring, and what appeared to be practiced charges when Mr. Rayner's back was turned. When I brought this to Mr. Rayner's attention, he demonstrated his control by entering the enclosure and sitting with his back to Caesar for 5 minutes. He survived through luck alone. Caesar stalked him the entire time, approaching within 2 feet before Mr. Rayner turned around. Jack's response to Dr. Hawkins' warnings was to post a Facebook video that same evening. In it, he's lying on the ground, while Caesar stands over him, massive paws on either side of Jack's head. The experts visited today, Jack says to the camera, Caesar's hot breath visible on his face. They think my boy here is dangerous. What do you think, Caesar? You dangerous. Caesar's response was to bare his teeth, what Jack called a smile, but what any behaviorist would recognize as a threat display. The video got 2.3 million views and thousands of comments calling Jack brave and inspiring. Neighbors living near the sanctuary began reporting unusual activity. Robert Mills, whose property bordered the sanctuary's eastern edge, called the sheriff's department twice in the week before the attack. Those lions were going crazy at night, he stated. Roaring, fighting, crashing into the fences. Sounded like all hell was breaking loose. Lived here 20 years, heard those cats plenty, but this was different. This was rage. Jack's own family was growing increasingly desperate. Sarah Rayner had moved out with their daughter Emma in July, unable to watch what she saw as her husband's slow-motion suicide. He wouldn't listen, Sarah told her sister in a recorded phone call. I begged him to at least use the safety protocols he'd written himself. He said I didn't understand the bond he had with them. He said Caesar would die for him. I said that's exactly what I was afraid of, that one of them would die and it would be Jack. Emma Rayner, now 23 and studying veterinary medicine like her mother, made one last attempt to reach her father on August 15th. She drove to the sanctuary with her boyfriend, finding Jack in the food preparation area. Dad looked exhausted, Emma later testified. He'd lost weight, had scratches all over his arms that he said were from playing. Told him Mom and I were scared. He hugged me and said, Emma Bear, I've been doing this since before you were born. These cats are my life. They'd never hurt me. I started crying because somehow I knew it was the last time I'd see him. The sanctuary's volunteer staff was in open revolt. 3 longtime volunteers quit in the first 2 weeks of August, citing safety concerns. Tom Bradley, who'd volunteered for 5 years, sent a formal letter to the board of directors on August 14th. Mr. Rayner has lost perspective. He enters enclosures without following lockout procedures. He ignores clear aggressive displays. Yesterday, I watched him turn his back on 3 agitated lions to adjust a water valve. When I urged caution, he accused me of not understanding the language of love. This facility is one mistake away from tragedy. Social media followers began noticing changes too. Jack's daily videos, usually upbeat and playful, had taken on a manic quality. In one posted August 16th, Jack attempts to play with Caesar, who repeatedly turns away, ears flat against his head. Someone's being a grumpy cat today. Jack laughs, reaching out to pat Caesar's flank. The lion spins with lightning speed, jaws snapping inches from Jack's hand. Jack jerks back, nearly falling, then forces a laugh. See that? He's just playing. That's how cats show affection. The comment section filled with warnings. That's not play. Behavior, please be careful, that lion is going to hurt you. Financial pressure was mounting as well. The sanctuary's main corporate sponsor had pulled funding after their insurance company deemed the operation unacceptably high risk. The facility was operating on a shoestring budget, forcing Jack to buy lower-grade meat and postpone essential maintenance. The electric backup systems for the enclosures had been offline for 3 weeks. The tranquilizer gun was locked in a shed because Jack had let the permit expire. Every safety redundancy had been stripped away by neglect or financial necessity. On August 17th, the day before the attack, Maria Gonzalez made one final attempt to prevent disaster. She arrived early to find Jack already in the main enclosure, all 5 lions circling him with what she described as coordinated precision. She grabbed the air horn from the safety station and gave 3 long blasts, the emergency signal. Jack emerged, furious. "You could have caused a stampede," he shouted. Maria responded by quitting on the spot. "I can't watch you die," she told him. "And that's what's going to happen if you keep this." Jack's response was to go live on Facebook that evening, broadcasting to his 800,000 followers from inside the enclosure. The 47-minute video shows him hand-feeding all 5 lions, including placing meat directly into Caesar's. "People say I'm crazy," he tells the camera. "But look at this. Pure trust, pure love. Tomorrow marks 23 years since I started this journey, and I've never felt more connected to these magnificent creatures." What Jack didn't mention was that earlier that day, Caesar had killed and partially eaten a 50-pound wild hog that had somehow gotten into the enclosure. Volunteers found the remains scattered across the habitat, Caesar standing over the carcass with blood coating his muzzle and chest. It was the first time in 8 years Caesar had made a kill of blood, and the act of killing had awakened something primal in the lion, something that had been dormant but never truly gone. That night, security cameras captured haunting footage. Caesar spent hours staring at the main gate, the entrance Jack used every day. His tail never stopped moving, a metronome of predatory focus. The other lions gave him a wide berth, recognizing the alpha's changing mood. At 3:17 a.m., Caesar approached the gate and did something that would only be understood in hindsight. He tested the latch with his paw, learning exactly how it worked, preparing for what was to come. Thursday, August 18, 2022, dawned with an oppressive heat that seemed to press down on the Texas landscape like a physical weight. By 6 a.m., the temperature was already 87 degrees, heading toward a predicted high of 103. The Weather Service had issued an excessive heat warning for the 3rd consecutive day. At Rayner's Big Cat Sanctuary, the metal roofs of the animal shelters were already too hot to touch, and the lions were showing clear signs of heat stress. Jack arrived at 6:45 a.m., earlier than usual. Security footage shows him sitting in his truck for several minutes, staring at the main enclosure. His body language appeared different, shoulders hunched, movements hesitant. He made 2 phone calls, one to Sarah that went unanswered, another to an unknown number that lasted only 30 seconds. He finally exited the truck. He stood at the entrance gate for a full minute before entering, something volunteers later said they'd never seen him do before. The morning routine began normally enough. Jack checked on the tigers and leopards first, distributing vitamins and documenting each animal's condition in his log. His handwriting, usually neat and precise, was shaky. Under Caesar's entry he wrote, "Restless. Didn't finish dinner. Eyes tracking everything. Maybe increase." The sentence was never completed. At 9:30 a.m., Maria Gonzalez arrived despite having quit the day before. "I couldn't stay away," she later explained. "Something felt wrong. Call it intuition, but I needed to be there." She found Jack preparing the morning medications, his hands trembling slightly as he measured out supplements. When she asked if he was feeling all right, he gave her a strange look and said, "Caesar knows something. I can feel it. He's been trying to tell me something all week." Tom Bradley arrived at 10 a.m. to repair the perimeter fence damage from the wild hog incident. He positioned himself on the northeastern corner of the property, approximately 400 yards from the main lion enclosure. From his vantage point, he could see the lions but was too far away to hear any conversations. He would later become a crucial witness, his elevated position giving him a clear view of events that unfolded. The lions' behavior that morning was notably abnormal. Instead of their usual lounging in whatever shade they could find, all 5 were active, moving in what appeared to be coordinated patterns around the enclosure. Caesar maintained a central position, while the other 4 circled the perimeter. Dr. Richardson would later analyze the security footage and identify this as cooperative hunting formation, a behavior typically seen when prides are preparing to take down large prey. At 11:45 a.m., Jack made his first major mistake of the day. The sanctuary's protocol required a two-person feeding system for the main enclosure, one person to distract the lions while another distributed food. With Maria present, this should have been followed. Instead, Jack insisted on entering alone, saying, "They're calm when it's just me. People make them nervous." Maria objected strenuously, but Jack overruled her, adding, "I've been doing this for 23 years. I think I know my own cats." The food preparation revealed the second critical error. Due to the budget constraints, Jack had been forced to purchase lower-grade beef from a new supplier. This meat had a stronger odor and higher blood content than what the lions were accustomed to. Additionally, the usual feeding schedule had been disrupted. Normally, the lions were fed at 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. The delay until nearly noon meant they were hungrier than usual, their predatory instincts sharpened by the wait. At 12:15 p.m., Jack performed the feeding system check. The double-gate entry system, which he designed himself, required both gates to be secured before opening either one. Security footage shows Jack checking the outer gate but merely glancing at the inner gate without physically testing it. This gate, investigations would later reveal, had been damaged by Caesar's nocturnal testing and wasn't fully latching. It would hold against casual pressure but could be forced open by a determined 500-pound lion. The wheeled cart Jack used for transporting meat was the same one he'd used for 15 years, a rusted wheelbarrow, with a squeaky wheel that usually announced his arrival. But the extreme heat had caused the metal to expand, and the wheel was now silent. The lions, accustomed to the audio cue of incoming food, weren't prepared for Jack's approach. In the wild, surprise is often the difference between predator and prey. Weather conditions at 2 p.m. created what experts would later call a perfect storm for predator aggression. The temperature had reached 101 degrees. Humidity was at 78%, creating a suffocating atmosphere that made breathing difficult for both humans and animals. There was no wind, leaving the air stagnant and filled with the competing scents of 5 different lions in various stages of territorial marking. The barometric pressure was dropping rapidly, signaling an approaching storm system that animals can sense long before humans. Jack loaded the wheelbarrow with approximately 80 pounds of raw beef, divided into 5 portions. Surveillance shows him adding an extra portion to Caesar's pile. Later analysis would show it was nearly double the usual amount, suggesting Jack sensed Caesar's agitation and was attempting to placate him with food. This decision would prove fatal, as the scent of that much raw meat would trigger an intensified feeding response in an already agitated predator. At 2:30 p.m., Jack conducted what would be his final safety check. He verified that the tranquilizer gun was in the shed, though still unloaded and locked. He confirmed Maria was at her station with radio contact. He even put on his protective vest, a Kevlar-reinforced garment he rarely wore, but removed it after just a few minutes, saying it was too damn hot and would send the wrong message to the cats. The final witnesses to Jack's normal behavior were a group of 3 donors who had arrived for a scheduled tour at 2:35 p.m. Jack greeted them enthusiastically, showing them the tiger habitats and discussing his conservation philosophy. One donor, Rebecca Martinez, later noted that Jack seemed wired, like he'd had too much coffee, and kept glancing toward the lion enclosure. When offered the chance to see the lions being fed, all 3 donors declined, citing the oppressive heat. This decision likely saved them from witnessing the horror that was about to unfold. At 2:45 p.m., Jack made his final entry in the sanctuary's log. Afternoon feeding. Caesar still agitated. Will hand feed to reinforce bond. Heat breaking soon, storms coming. This too shall pass. He then did something he'd never done before in 23 years. He removed his wedding ring and placed it on the desk, telling Maria he didn't want to lose it in the Maria would later wonder if some part of Jack knew what was coming. The security system recorded Jack's final walk to the lion enclosure at 2:47 p.m. His gait was confident but faster than usual. He was wearing his standard uniform, khaki shorts that offered no protection, the faded Lions Need Love 2T shirt that had become his trademark, and the leather boots that had walked this path thousands of times. The wheelbarrow was loaded with meat that was already attracting flies in the oppressive heat. As Jack approached the outer gate, all 5 lions moved to the fence. Their positioning was unusual. Instead of the typical excited cluster around the feeding area, they formed a semicircle, with Caesar at the center point. Their tails were still, their bodies low to the ground, their eyes locked on Jack with an intensity that would have alarmed any experienced handler. But Jack had long ago stopped seeing warning signs, interpreting every behavior through the lens of love and trust. Tom Bradley, still working on the fence, noticed the unusual lion formation and stood up to watch. He was too far away to shout a warning but close enough to see everything that was about to happen. He would later say that in that moment, watching Jack wheel the meat toward the enclosure while 5 apex predators waited in perfect hunting formation, he knew he was about to witness something terrible. At exactly 2:49 p.m., Jack opened the outer gate and pushed the wheelbarrow into the safety chamber between the 2 gates. The protocol required him to secure the outer gate before opening the inner gate. Security footage shows him closing the outer gate but not engaging the lock. His attention was entirely focused on Caesar, who had moved to within inches of the inner fence, his massive head perfectly still, golden eyes unblinking. "Hey, big boy," Jack's voice is audible on the security recording. "Daddy's got your favorite today. Extra portion for my special guy." Caesar's response was to lift his upper lip slightly, revealing a canine tooth. Jack interpreted this as anticipation. Any big cat expert would have recognized it as a final threat display. At 2:50 p.m., Jack Rayner opened the inner gate and entered the enclosure for the last time. The inner gate swung open with a metallic creak that seemed to hang in the superheated air. Jack pushed the wheelbarrow forward, its wheels leaving deep grooves in the dusty ground. For a moment, perhaps 2 seconds, captured in horrifying clarity by the security cameras, everything remained still. 5 lions, motionless as statues. A man, bending to grab the first portion of meat. The Texas sun beating down mercilessly on a scene that would soon explode into primordial violence. Caesar moved first. Not with the lazy, almost affectionate approach Jack was accustomed to, but with the explosive power of 500 pounds of muscle driven by millions of years of predatory instinct. The lion covered the 20 feet between them in less than 2 seconds. Jack had just enough time to start turning, his mouth opening in surprise, before Caesar's massive paw struck him in the chest with the force of a sledgehammer. The impact lifted Jack completely off his feet, sending him crashing into the wheelbarrow and scattering bloody meat across the enclosure. Jack's training kicked in. He tried to make himself large, raising his arms and shouting, "Caesar, down." But Caesar wasn't the hand-raised cub anymore. He was an apex predator who had identified prey, and Jack's commands might as well have been whispers in a hurricane. Tom Bradley, watching from the fence line, immediately understood the severity of what was happening. It wasn't like the videos where lions play rough, he later testified. This was a kill. Caesar's whole body was different, low, coiled, every muscle defined. He was hunting. Tom began running toward the enclosure while fumbling for his cell phone, knowing he was too far away to help but unable to look away. Caesar's second strike was a classic lion attack pattern, a powerful bite to the shoulder designed to immobilize prey. His jaws, capable of exerting 650 pounds of pressure per square inch, clamped down on Jack's upper right arm and shoulder. The sound of breaking bones was audible on the security footage. Jack's scream, a sound his friends would later say haunted their dreams, echoed across the sanctuary. But Jack Rayner wasn't ready to die. With his left hand, he grabbed a handful of Caesar's mane and tried to push the lion's head away. His legs kicked frantically, combat boots striking Caesar's chest and legs with impacts that would have deterred any normal animal. But lions are built to withstand the kicks of zebras and buffalo. Caesar merely adjusted his grip, his rear claws digging into the earth for leverage as he began to drag Jack away from the gate. Maria Gonzalez heard Jack's scream from the office 200 yards away. She burst out the door to see Caesar dragging Jack deeper into the enclosure while the other 4 lions began to circle. Her 911 call, placed at 2:51 p.m., captured her terror. Oh God, oh God. The lions. Jack's in there with them and there's blood everywhere. Please send help. Please. The dispatcher, trained to remain calm, tried to get crucial information. Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. Where are you located? Rayner's Big Cat Sanctuary. Highway 47. Please hurry. They're eating him. Inside the enclosure, Jack was fighting with every ounce of strength his body possessed. Caesar had released his shoulder and was now going for the killing bite, the throat. Jack managed to get his left arm up in time, sacrificing it to Caesar's jaws to protect his neck. The lion bit down with full force, and Jack's arms snapped like a dry branch. So, didn't stop fighting. With his legs, he continued to kick. With his right arm, mangled but still partially functional, punched at Caesar's eyes and nose. Dr. Richardson, analyzing the footage months later, would note that Jack's defensive tactics were textbook perfect. Did everything right once the attack began. Protected his throat, went for the eyes, kept fighting. The problem was he was fighting a perfect predator in its prime. It would be like trying to stop a freight train with your bare hands. The other lions had now joined the attack. Thor and Apollo, the younger males, approached from the flanks. Involvement shifted the dynamic from a single predator attack to a coordinated pride hunt. Thor bit into Jack's left leg, while Apollo went for the right. Jack was now being attacked by 3 lions simultaneously, each pulling in different directions. The security footage becomes difficult to watch at this point, the violence so intense that investigators had to view it in segments. Sheba and Nala, the 2 females, initially held back, pacing nervously around the perimeter of the attack. But the scent of blood and the sounds of the hunt triggered their own predatory instincts. Nala was the first to join, targeting Jack's lower back. Her bite, while not as powerful as the male's, was precisely placed, severing crucial muscles and nerves. Tom Bradley had covered half the distance to the enclosure when he realized the futility of his run. He stopped and dialed 911, his call coming in just seconds after Maria's. There's a man being killed by lions at Rayner's sanctuary on Highway 47, he shouted. Multiple lions attacking. Send everyone. Animal control, ambulances, everyone. Jack's resistance was weakening. He'd lost too much blood, sustained too many injuries. But even as his body failed, witnesses say he kept talking to Caesar. The audio is difficult to make out over the sounds of the attack, but Maria had gotten closer despite the danger, heard him saying, "It's okay, buddy. It's okay. I love you. I'm sorry. I love you." Caesar, perhaps responding to the voice he'd known since he was 8 weeks old, actually paused. For a moment he released his grip on Jack's arm and looked at him. Their eyes met, the dying man and the blood-soaked lion. Reached out with his mangled right hand, trying one last time to touch the animal he'd raised. Caesar tilted his head. Gesture Jack had always interpreted as curiosity. Then Sheba bit into Jack's exposed side, and the moment was shattered. Caesar's predatory instincts reasserted themselves with devastating finality. He lunged for Jack's throat, and this time, there was no arm to block him. Massive jaws closed around Jack's neck with a crunch that was audible even over Maria's screaming. The attack had lasted 4 minutes and 37 seconds. But the horror wasn't over. In the wild, lions often begin feeding before their prey is fully dead, and that's what happened here. As Jack's movements stilled to occasional twitches, the 5 lions began to feed. The security footage mercifully becomes partially obscured at this point, as Tom Bradley arrived at the outer fence and began spraying the fire hose he'd grabbed from an emergency station. The water blast caused the lions to scatter momentarily, dragging pieces of their kill with them. In that brief window, Tom could see Jack's body. "I knew he was gone," Tom later said, his voice breaking. "No one could survive what I saw." But his eyes were still open, and I swear he blinked. Just once. Like he was saying goodbye. Maria had armed herself with an air horn and was blasting it repeatedly while screaming at the lions. The combination of water and noise was enough to drive them to the far corner of the enclosure, but they didn't abandon their kill entirely. Caesar, in particular, positioned himself between the humans and Jack's body, his muzzle covered in blood, his eyes promising death to anyone who tried to take his prize. The first sheriff's deputy arrived at 2:58 p.m., 7 minutes after the first 911 call. Deputy Marcus Williams, a 15-year veteran, took one look at the scene and immediately called for backup. "We need everyone," he radioed. "Multiple big cats, victim down. Cats are still active and aggressive. This is beyond anything we're trained for." By 3:05 p.m., the sanctuary was swarming with emergency personnel. Paramedics stood by helplessly, unable to enter the enclosure while the lions remained loose. Animal control officers debated using tranquilizer darts versus lethal force. The lions, agitated by the sirens and shouting, began fighting among themselves over Jack's remains. It was Maria who made the crucial decision. She knew where Jack kept the emergency meat supply, hundreds of pounds of beef in a freezer near the office. While deputies kept their weapons trained on the lions, she and Tom began throwing meat into the far corner of the enclosure, trying to lure the lions away from Jack's body. The strategy partially worked. Thor, Apollo, and the two females were drawn to the easy meal. But Caesar wouldn't budge. He stood over Jack's body, growling at anyone who approached the fence. His message was clear: this was his kill and he would defend it. Finally, at 3:18 p.m., Dr. Michael Torres arrived with a high-powered tranquilizer rifle. It took 3 darts to bring Caesar down, his massive body finally collapsing beside Jack's remains at 3:24 p.m. Only then could paramedics enter the enclosure. The official time of death was listed as 2:54 p.m., though Dr. Torres believed Jack had likely died within the first 2 minutes of the attack. The cause of death was massive trauma with fatal blood loss from multiple bite wounds. The medical examiner would later note that any one of at least 6 different injuries would have been fatal on its own. As Caesar lay unconscious and the other lions fed in the corner, emergency workers carefully recovered Jack's body. The wedding ring, the one he'd removed and placed on the desk, would be returned to Sarah along with his other personal effects. She would later say that somehow, she'd known the moment he took it off that she'd never see him alive again. The attack on Jack Rayner was over. The questions, the blame, and the aftermath were just beginning. The first sheriff's patrol car skidded to a stop outside Rayner's Big Cat Sanctuary at 2:58 p.m., kicking up a cloud of dust that hung in the stifling air. Deputy Marcus Williams had been eating lunch at a barbecue joint just 4 miles away when the call came in. In his 15 years with the Travis County Sheriff's Department, he'd responded to dog attacks. Even a few exotic animal escapes, but nothing had prepared him for the scene that greeted him. Through the chain-link fence, Williams could see 5 blood-soaked lions in the main enclosure, with what remained of a human body at the center of their circle. 2 civilians, a woman and a man, were desperately spraying water and sounding air horns, trying to drive the animals back. Williams immediately radioed dispatch, Code 3, all available units, to Rayner's sanctuary. Multiple big cats, victim down, and, God, they're eating him. We need everyone, animal control, EMS, Texas Parks and Wildlife. This is beyond anything we're equipped for. Within minutes, the quiet rural road was transformed into a chaotic emergency scene. Ambulances arrived with paramedics who could only stand by helplessly. Fire trucks pulled up, their crews unsure how to assist. More sheriffs. Deputies established a perimeter, keeping back the crowd of neighbors and passers-by drawn by the sirens. The Temperature had climbed to 103 degrees, and the combination of heat, blood, and fear created an atmosphere of barely controlled panic. Paramedic team leader Jennifer Chen was among the first medical responders. With 20 years of experience, she'd seen severe trauma before, but the sight through the fence made her physically recoil. The victim was clearly beyond help. She later reported, but protocol demanded we try to reach him. The problem was 5 apex predators between us and our patient, and they were actively feeding. Animal Control Officer Rick Valdez arrived at 3:06 p.m. with the county's emergency response trailer. He took one look at the situation and immediately called for state resources. County equipment isn't rated for big cats, he explained to the growing command group. Our tranquilizer doses are calculated for dogs, maybe the occasional escaped pig. The lions weigh 400 to 500 pounds each. We need specialized equipment. The scene commander, Sheriff's Lieutenant David Morrison, faced an impossible decision. Wait for proper equipment, while any chance of saving the victim dwindled, or authorize lethal force against valuable endangered animals. The arrival of Maria Gonzalez with critical information helped shape his decision. Jack would never forgive us if we shot his cats, she said through tears. There's emergency meat in the freezer. We can lure them away. While Maria and Tom Bradley began the dangerous work of throwing meat to distract the lions, the emergency responders developed a coordinated plan. The fire department set up high-pressure hoses at multiple points around the enclosure. Deputies took positions with rifles, ordered to fire only if the lions attempted to escape or threatened rescue personnel. Paramedics prepared trauma equipment, though privately, each knew their efforts would likely be futile. Dr. Michael Torres's arrival at 3:18 p.m. marked a turning point. The veterinarian had grabbed the sanctuary's emergency tranquilizer kit from his clinic, along with doses he'd calculated specifically for Caesar over years of treating the massive lion. I need clear shots, he told Lieutenant Morrison. These doses are calibrated for each animal. Too little, they'll just get angrier. Too much could be fatal. The first challenge was Caesar, who stood guard over Jack's body with primal possessiveness. Dr. Torres positioned himself at the fence, rifle steady despite the sweat running down his face. His first dart struck Caesar in the shoulder. The lion spun, roaring with rage, searching for this new threat. For a terrifying moment, it seemed he might charge the fence. The second dart hit the thick muscle of Caesar's rear flank. Still, the massive lion remained standing, though his movements became sluggish. He's metabolizing it faster than normal, Dr. Torres observed. Adrenaline from the attack. He needs a third dose. The final dart struck Caesar in the neck. The lion took 3 staggering steps toward Jack's body, as if trying to protect his kill, even as the drugs overwhelmed him, before finally collapsing at 3:24 p.m. With Caesar down, the team moved quickly. The other 4 lions, distracted by the meat Maria and Tom had thrown, were corralled into the holding area using water cannons and noise devices. Wildlife Officer Janet Powell, who'd arrived from Texas Parks and Wildlife, coordinated the delicate operation. Move slow, no sudden movements, she instructed. Through the radio, these animals are in full predatory mode. One wrong move and they'll redirect onto us. Finally, at 3:31 p.m., the enclosure was clear. Paramedics Jennifer Chen and Robert Martinez were the first through the gate, though both knew their mission was recovery, not rescue. Jack Rayner lay in a spreading pool of blood, his body bearing catastrophic injuries. Chen knelt beside him, going through the motions of checking for vitals even as the extent of damage made survival impossible. Time of death 2:54 p.m., Dr. Torres announced, based on the attack timeline and injury severity. The official pronunciation was a formality. Jack had likely died within minutes of Caesar's first strike. The paramedics carefully placed his remains on a stretcher, covering him with a sheet that immediately soaked through with blood. Carried him toward the ambulance. Maria Gonzalez collapsed, her legs finally giving out after 40 minutes of desperate action. The immediate danger passed. Attention turned to securing the scene. The 5 lions were now contained in separate holding areas, Caesar still unconscious from the tranquilizers. Blood covered nearly a quarter of the main enclosure, with pieces of clothing and flesh scattered across the dusty ground. Crime scene investigators began the grim work of documenting everything, treating it as they would any death scene even though criminal charges were unlikely. Texas game warden Sarah Mitchell took charge of decisions regarding the animals. Standard protocol in fatal attacks is euthanasia, she explained to the growing crowd of officials. But these are endangered species and the circumstances are complex. We need to contact the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service before making any decisions. Dr. Torres monitored Caesar as the tranquilizers began wearing off. The lion woke slowly, disoriented and aggressive. When he saw humans near the enclosure, he charged the fence repeatedly, his roars echoing across the sanctuary. He's tasted human blood and flesh, Dr. Torres said quietly. He can never be trusted around people again. Them can. The sanctuary's phone began ringing incessantly as news of the attack spread. Local news vans arrived within an hour, their cameras capturing images of emergency vehicles and blood-stained ground that would soon spread across the internet. Lieutenant Morrison established a media perimeter, knowing that graphic footage could traumatize viewers and complicate the investigation. By 4 p.m., Jack's body was en route to the Travis County Medical Examiner's office. The autopsy would reveal the full extent of his injuries: massive tissue damage to both arms, catastrophic bite wounds to the neck and torso, severe lacerations to both legs, and defensive wounds on his hands from fighting back. The medical examiner noted that Jack had fought harder than most victims, his body bearing evidence of a desperate struggle for survival. Back at the sanctuary, emergency responders faced the complex task of securing 5 dangerous predators. Temporary fencing was erected to reinforce the existing enclosures. Armed guards were posted, not to protect the lions, but to protect anyone who might get too close. The lions paced their confinements, agitated by the smell of blood and the disruption to their territory. Sarah Rayner arrived at 4:30 p.m., accompanied by her sister and a family friend. She'd been in her veterinary clinic when a client ran in with news from social media. Now she stood at the fence where her husband had died, staring at the blood-soaked ground with an expression of profound grief mixed with bitter vindication. "I told him," she whispered. "God, how many times did I tell him?" The emergency phase was winding down, but the complications were just beginning. 5 lions that had killed and partially consumed a human posed unprecedented challenges. The sanctuary's legal status was unclear. Was it a crime? An accident site? A public safety hazard requiring immediate shutdown? County officials, state wildlife authorities, and federal endangered species protectors would spend days untangling the jurisdictional maze. As the sun began to set on August 18th, casting long shadows across the sanctuary, the immediate emergency response concluded. Jack Rayner's body was gone, the lions were contained, and the investigation was beginning. For everyone who'd responded to that scene, the deputies who'd seen predators feeding on a human, the paramedics who'd recovered what remained, the animal control officers who'd faced down 5 blood-maddened lions, the images would linger forever. Deputy Williams, first on scene, would later require counseling for PTSD. "You trained for human violence," he explained. But this was nature asserting itself in the most brutal way possible. The casualness of it, how the lions went from attacking to feeding like it was just another meal. It reshapes how you see the world. The emergency response to Jack Rayner's death had been swift and professional, but no amount of training could have prepared these first responders for the primal horror of watching apex predators remind humanity of its place in the food chain. The Travis County Medical Examiner's office released Jack Rayner's body to his family on August 22nd, 4 days after the attack. The autopsy report, spanning 47 pages, detailed injuries so severe that Dr. Patricia Hammond, the chief medical examiner, added a rare personal note. In 30 years of forensic pathology, including cases involving industrial accidents and plane crashes, I have never documented trauma this extensive from an animal attack. The cause of death was listed as exsanguination due to multiple penetrating injuries, with contributing factors including cervical spine fracture and massive soft tissue damage. Sarah Rayner, accompanied by her daughter Emma and sister Margaret, made the identification through photographs. The body was too damaged for traditional viewing. The funeral home director, James Morrison, gently suggested a closed casket service. "There's only so much we can do," he explained quietly. Sarah nodded, her face a mask of exhausted grief. She'd been preparing for this moment for years, but the reality was worse than any nightmare she'd imagined. The question of what to do with the 5 lions dominated emergency meetings between state and federal officials. Under Texas law, any animal that kills a human must be euthanized. But these weren't ordinary animals, they were endangered African lions, protected under federal law. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service sent investigator Raymond Burke to assess the situation. His report was blunt. While these animals acted according to their nature, they have now identified humans as prey. They cannot be safely maintained in any facility where human contact is possible. Caesar, as the primary attacker, faced certain euthanasia. But animal rights groups immediately mobilized, flooding the sanctuary with calls and emails. "Punishing Caesar for being a lion is unconscionable," wrote PETA Representative Diana Foster. Jack Rayner created this situation through years of inappropriate interaction. "The lion is the victim here." Sentiment, expressed while Jack's family was planning his funeral, created a fierce backlash from the local community. The sanctuary's board of directors held an emergency meeting on August 20th. Of the 7 board members, only 2 had actively overseen Jack's operations. The rest were donors who trusted his expertise. Board President William Hayes, a retired banker who donated over $100,000 to the sanctuary, was devastated. "We failed in our oversight," he admitted. Jack assured us repeatedly that his methods were safe. "We wanted to believe him because we saw the love he had for these animals." Financial reality quickly set in. The sanctuary's insurance company, Exotic Animal Liability Specialists, immediately invoked a clause excluding coverage for injuries resulting from failure to maintain appropriate barriers between humans and Category 1 dangerous animals. The sanctuary faced potential lawsuits from Jack's family, traumatized witnesses, and even neighboring property owners claiming decreased land values. Within 48 hours of Jack's death, the board voted unanimously to close Rayner's Big Cat Sanctuary permanently. The investigation revealed systematic safety violations dating back years. Inspector Janet Rodriguez from the USDA compiled a damning report. Mr. Rayner routinely entered enclosures without backup, dismissed written warnings from multiple experts, and created social media content that encouraged dangerous interactions. The facility operated on charisma rather than protocol. The report identified 127 separate violations of the Animal Welfare Act, any one of which could have prevented the tragedy. Jack's social media presence became evidence in multiple investigations. His YouTube channel, with its 800,000 subscribers, was demonetized within 24 hours of his death. Yet videos continued circulating, garnering millions of views. As people sought to understand how the Lion Whisperer of Texas met such a violent end, comments sections became battlegrounds between those blaming Jack for his recklessness and others praising his dedication to conservation. The fate of the 5 lions was decided in a closed-door meeting on August 25th. Caesar would be euthanized. His attack on Jack and subsequent behavior made him irredeemably dangerous. The other 4 would be separated and relocated to accredited facilities with no-contact protocols. The decision sparked protests from animal rights activists who gathered outside the sanctuary with signs reading, "Justice for Caesar, and humans are the real predators. On August 28, Dr. Michael Torres administered the fatal injection to Caesar, the lion who had been hand-raised from. A cub, who had appeared in countless videos as Jack's best friend, died at 3:47 p.m. His body was cremated, the ashes scattered in an undisclosed location to prevent them from becoming either shrine or symbol. Torres, who had known Caesar since he was a kitten, wept openly. He was a magnificent animal who should never have been put in this position, he said. The remaining lions were transported over the following weeks. Thor and Apollo went to the Wild Animal Sanctuary in Colorado, where they would live in large habitats with no human contact. Sheba traveled to Big Cat Rescue in Florida, while Nala was accepted by the International Exotic Animal Sanctuary in Texas. Each facility required signed agreements that the lions would never be exhibited or allowed contact with humans. Jack's funeral on August 30th drew over 500 mourners. The service, held at First Baptist Church of Austin, struggled to reconcile Jack's devotion to animals with the violent manner of his death. Pastor David Miller spoke carefully. Jack loved deeply and lived fearlessly. Whether we agreed with his methods or not, none can deny his passion for God's creatures. Sarah, dressed in black, remained composed until the slideshow of family photos. When an image appeared of Jack holding baby Emma while Caesar lounged nearby, she broke down completely. Emma Rayner delivered a eulogy that captured the complexity of her father's legacy. My dad believed love could overcome nature itself. He was wrong, but it was a beautiful kind of wrong. He died doing what he loved, killed by an animal he loved. There's tragedy in that, but also a strange completeness. He wouldn't have wanted to die any other way. Her words, mature beyond her 23 years, offered the first step toward family healing. The legal aftermath stretched on for months. Sarah Rayner filed a wrongful death suit against the sanctuary's board, arguing they failed in their duty to enforce safety protocols. The case settled out of court for an undisclosed sum, money that Sarah donated entirely to legitimate big cat conservation efforts. I don't want Jack's death to profit anyone, she explained. I want it to mean something. Tom Bradley and Maria Gonzalez, the two witnesses to the attack, both required extensive therapy for PTSD. Maria, who had worked with Jack for 6 years, was particularly affected. I see it every time I close my eyes, she told her therapist. The speed of it, the violence. But worse is remembering all the times I could have done more to stop him. She never worked with big cats again, taking a job at a small animal veterinary clinic. The sanctuary property became a subject of intense debate. Developers wanted to purchase the land, but the community resisted commercializing a site where someone had died so horribly. Eventually, a conservation group bought the property, removing all structures and allowing it to return to natural scrubland. A small plaque placed where the lion enclosure once stood reads simply, "In memory of Jack Rayner, who loved not wisely but too well." The impact on exotic animal legislation was immediate and far-reaching. Texas passed Jack's Law in 2023, requiring all facilities with dangerous animals to maintain minimum distances between humans and animals, employ at least 2 handlers for any interaction, and carry liability insurance of at least $2 million. Similar laws followed in other states, fundamentally changing how exotic animals could be kept and displayed. 6 months after the attack, a documentary crew interviewed Sarah Rayner for a film about exotic animal ownership. Asked if she blamed the lions, her answer was immediate: never. They did what 400,000 years of evolution programmed them to do. I blame the human arrogance that thinks love can overcome instinct. Jack forgot the first rule of working with predators: respect is not the same as domestication. The sanctuary's social media accounts were transferred to a big cat conservation organization, which used them to educate about proper wildlife management. Jack's most popular video, the one of him lying among 5 lions while they groomed him, was edited with expert commentary explaining every warning sign he missed. It became the powerful teaching tool, showing how perceived affection was actually resource guarding and dominance testing. 1 year after Jack's death, the Rayner family held a private memorial at the site. Sarah, Emma, and a small group of close friends gathered where the lion enclosure once stood. Emma read a letter she'd written to her father, words. Carried away by the Texas wind, "You taught me to love fearlessly, Dad. I just wish you'd also taught me when to be afraid." They left wildflowers, the same type that now grew where Caesar once paced, and said their final goodbyes. The aftermath of Jack Rayner's death rippled through the exotic animal community for years. Facilities across the country implemented new safety protocols. Insurance companies rewrote policies. Legislators passed laws. But perhaps the most lasting impact was on the thousands of people who'd followed Jack's journey online. Many reported a fundamental shift in how they viewed human-animal relationships, understanding finally that love alone cannot change what nature has decreed. Dr. Kevin Richardson, renowned wildlife behaviorist and author of The Predator Paradox, spent 3 months analyzing every piece of footage from Rayner's big cat sanctuary. His 200-page report, commissioned by the International Association of Wildlife Sanctuaries, became the definitive analysis of what went wrong. This wasn't a sudden, unpredictable attack, Dr. Richardson stated in his executive summary. This was the inevitable conclusion of years of misconceived interactions based on a fundamental misunderstanding of predator psychology. Richardson identified 847 distinct instances in Jack's social media videos where the lions displayed what he termed pre-aggressive positioning. These included tail flicking patterns, ear positions, pupil dilation, and muscle tension that indicated stress or hunting behavior. Mr. Rayner consistently misinterpreted these signals, Richardson explained. What he called playfulness was actually testing behavior. What he saw as affection was resource guarding. The confirmation bias was so strong that he literally couldn't see the warnings that were obvious to any trained observer. The attack pattern itself followed textbook lion hunting behavior. Dr. Sarah Hartman, who had studied African lion attacks for 2 decades, broke down the footage second by second. Caesar's approach utilized what we call rush and strike tactics, typically employed against large prey. The initial chest strike was designed to knock the victim off balance. The shoulder bite targeted major blood vessels. The coordinated attack by multiple lions mirrors pride hunting behavior perfectly. From a behavioral standpoint, this was a successful hunt, not an aberration. Veterinary pathologist Dr. Amanda Chin examined Caesar's remains after his euthanasia, looking for physiological factors that might have contributed to the attack. Her findings were revealing. Caesar showed signs of chronic stress, including enlarged adrenal glands and gastric ulcers. His testosterone levels were abnormally high, likely due to competition with the other males. Most significantly, we found evidence of recent neurological changes in the amygdala, the brain's fear and aggression center, possibly triggered by the extreme heat and social stress. The role of environmental factors couldn't be ignored. Meteorologist Dr. James Murphy analyzed weather patterns leading up to the attack. The 3-day heat wave created what we call a pressure cooker environment. Temperatures above 100 degrees Fahrenheit significantly impact large mammal behavior, increasing irritability and reducing impulse control. Dropping barometric pressure would have created additional physiological stress. These animals were primed for aggression by factors entirely outside human control. Psychologist Dr. Rachel Goldman, who specialized in human-animal relationships, offered insights into Jack's mindset. Mr. Rayner exhibited what we call expertise-induced blindness. His early successes with the animals created a false sense of mastery. Each day without incident reinforced his beliefs, making him progressively blind to mounting dangers. This is similar to what we see in extreme sports athletes who push boundaries until catastrophe strikes. The social media aspect received particular scrutiny from Dr. Marcus Webb, a digital anthropologist studying online animal content. Jack Rayner was caught in a feedback loop. His most dangerous videos got the most views and positive comments. The algorithm rewarded risk-taking. His online persona, the fearless lion tamer, became a prison. Backing down or showing caution would have meant admitting his entire philosophy was wrong. The pressure to maintain his image likely overrode his survival instincts. Legal expert Professor Diana Martinez examined the regulatory failures that enabled the tragedy. The patchwork of federal, state, and local regulations created gaps that Mr. Rayner exploited. He operated in a gray area between private ownership and public exhibition. The USDA inspections focused on animal welfare, not human safety. Texas had no specific regulations about direct contact with big cats. It took a death to expose these systematic failures. Nutritionist Dr. Robert Park analyzed the lion's diet in the months before the attack. The budget constraints forced a switch to lower-grade meat with higher blood content and different mineral compositions. This dietary change could have impacted neurotransmitter production, potentially increasing aggression. Additionally, the irregular feeding schedule on the day of attack would have heightened food-seeking behaviors. Dr. Elizabeth Morgan, who had spent 30 years studying captive lion behavior, provided crucial context about Caesar. Specifically, hand-raised lions are actually more dangerous than wild-born captive lions. They lack the natural fear of humans that keeps wild lions at a distance. But they retain all the predatory instincts. Caesar saw Jack as a pride member, not a human to fear. In lion society, pride members can become prey if they show weakness. Jack's aging, slightly slower movements, his moment of vulnerability, these triggered ancient instincts. The pack dynamics received extensive analysis from Dr. Thomas Chin, an expert in social carnivore behavior. Housing. 3 adult males together violated every principle of lion management. In the wild, male lions fight to the death for territory. The presence of females in estrus created a powder keg. The attack footage shows classic cooperative hunting, but also competition, each lion trying to secure the kill. This competitive feeding likely increased the savagery of the attack. Forensic veterinarian Dr. Lisa Thompson examined the bite patterns and attack sequence. The initial strike showed Caesar targeted Jack with the same precision used on natural prey. The bite force measurements indicate he used maximum pressure. This wasn't a warning bite or defensive action. This was predation. The subsequent bites from the other lions followed natural feeding patterns, targeting areas with major blood vessels and soft tissue. Dr. Hassan Ahmed, who had studied human deaths from large predators across 3 continents, placed Jack's death in global context. Statistically, captive big cat attacks are rare but almost always fatal when they occur. The common factors are always the same: habituation to humans, direct contact, and a triggering event. What made this case unique was the extensive documentation. We can see exactly how years of small risks accumulated into catastrophe. Behavioral endocrinologist Dr. Jennifer Wu analyzed hormonal factors. The extreme heat would have elevated stress hormones in all the animals. Caesar's testosterone was likely spiking due to female pheromones. The combination of cortisol, testosterone, and adrenaline creates a neurochemical cocktail that can override years of conditioning. The scent of blood from the meat, and you have optimal conditions for predatory behavior. Dr. Martin Rodriguez, a trauma surgeon who reviewed Jack's autopsy, provided medical insights. The pattern of defensive wounds shows Mr. Rayner fought with extraordinary determination. He survived far longer than most victims of multi-lion attacks. His knowledge of lion behavior helped him protect vital areas initially, but the human body simply isn't designed to withstand this level of trauma. Even with immediate medical intervention, survival would have been impossible given the extent of injuries. Ethologist Dr. Catherine Black studied the post-attack behavior of the surviving lions. The 4 relocated lions showed signs of significant behavioral changes. They became hypervigilant around humans, more aggressive during feeding, and displayed stress behaviors for months after separation. This suggests the attack was traumatic for them as well, disrupted their social structure and triggered intense predatory states they couldn't control. Dr. Andrew Park, who had studied exotic animal ownership for 2 decades, addressed the broader implications. Rayner represented a particular archetype, the charismatic amateur who believes emotional connection can replace scientific understanding. These individuals often do genuine conservation work, but their methods put themselves, their animals, and the public at risk. This tragedy should serve as a definitive case study in why expertise and protocols exist. The consensus among experts was unanimous. Jack Rayner's death was predictable and preventable. Dr. Richardson concluded his analysis with a stark warning. Every single expert who examined this case identified multiple intervention points where tragedy could have been avoided. The failure wasn't in loving these animals, it was in believing that love could fundamentally change what they are. Lions are not misunderstood dogs waiting for the right human to unlock their gentleness. They are apex predators deserving of respect, proper management, and appropriate fear. The expert analysis revealed a perfect storm of factors: physiological stress, environmental pressures, social dynamics, hormonal influences, and human error. But at its core, the tragedy stemmed from a simple truth that Jack Rayner refused to accept: no amount of hand-raising, bottle feeding, or daily interaction can override millions of years of evolution. Caesar didn't betray Jack's trust. He simply remembered, in one catastrophic moment, what he truly was. Jack Rayner's tragedy teaches us the most fundamental lesson about human-wildlife interaction: love and respect are not the same thing, and confusing the two can be fatal. Jack loved his lions with an intensity that bordered on obsession, but he failed to respect what they truly were: apex predators with millions of years of evolutionary programming that no amount of hand-raising could erase. His story serves as a permanent reminder that when we forget the boundaries nature has established, we don't transcend them, we become victims of them. The warning signs were everywhere, documented in hundreds of hours of footage that now serve as educational material for wildlife facilities worldwide. Caesar's increasing aggression, the stressed pack dynamics, the safety violations, the dismissed expert warnings, each red flag was rationalized away by a man who believed his special connection made him immune to natural law. Wildlife educators now use Jack's videos as a comprehensive catalog of what not to do, pointing out the subtle signs of impending disaster that Jack himself couldn't or wouldn't see. Jack's legacy is complicated, marked by both genuine conservation achievements and dangerous delusions. He saved 23 big cats from worse fates: roadside zoos, private owners, and euthanasia. He educated millions about the beauty and power of these magnificent creatures. His sanctuary provided quality care for animals that had nowhere else to go. But he also perpetuated the dangerous myth that wild animals can be tamed through love, inspiring countless followers to take risks with exotic pets and dangerous wildlife. Sarah Rayner has become an unexpected advocate for wildlife safety, speaking at conferences about the danger of anthropomorphizing wild animals. Jack died because he forgot the first rule of working with predators, she tells audiences. They are not fur babies. They are not misunderstood pets. They are wild animals temporarily tolerating human presence. The moment we forget that, we're already dead, we just don't know it yet. Her powerful testimony has changed policies at facilities across the country. Emma Rayner completed her veterinary degree and now specializes in wildlife medicine, but with a radically different approach than her father. Dad taught me to love animals, she explains. His death taught me to respect them. With sedated animals, proper barriers, and strict protocols, I honor his memory by doing what he couldn't, keeping both humans and animals safe. She's developed new training programs that emphasize the critical difference between emotional connection and professional distance. The regulatory changes following Jack's death have been sweeping and permanent. The Rayner protocols, as they're informally known, mandate minimum distances, multiple handler requirements, and prohibit direct contact with Category 1 dangerous animals. Insurance requirements have made it financially impossible for facilities to operate without proper safety measures. Federal legislation now requires psychological evaluations for anyone working directly with apex predators, screening for the kind of risk blindness that Jack exhibited. The 5 lions who participated in the attack faced vastly different fates, each teaching its own lesson. Caesar's euthanasia, while controversial, was inevitable. A lion who has killed and consumed human flesh can never be trusted again. The 4 survivors, relocated to no-contact facilities, have shown varying degrees of adjustment. Thor and Apollo. The young males have adapted well to their new environment. Sheba struggles with isolation. Nala has become severely aggressive, attacking any human who approaches her enclosure. Their behaviors reinforce that the attack changed them as profoundly as it changed everyone else involved. Wildlife sanctuaries worldwide have implemented the Rayner Review, a comprehensive safety audit that examines everything from physical barriers to social media policies. The review has identified and corrected thousands of potential hazards, likely preventing numerous tragedies. Many facilities have installed memorial plaques reading, "Memory of Jack Rayner, love wisely, respect always," making his death a permanent reminder of the importance of proper protocols. The impact on social media has been particularly significant. Platforms now flag and often remove content showing dangerous human-wildlife interactions. The algorithm changes mean that videos of people cuddling tigers or playing with lions no longer go viral. Instead, they're often accompanied by warnings about the fatal consequences of such behavior. Jack's channel, preserved as an educational resource, includes expert commentary on every video explaining the dangers hidden in seemingly heartwarming moments. For the general public, Jack's story has fundamentally shifted perceptions about exotic animal ownership and interaction. The phrase "pulling a Rayner" has entered the vernacular, meaning to ignore obvious dangers due to emotional attachment. Wildlife tourism has seen increased demand for ethical, no-contact experiences. The selfie with a tiger industry has largely collapsed as people understand that any facility allowing such interactions is prioritizing profit over safety. The psychological impact on witnesses and first responders continues years later. Tom Bradley, who watched the attack from the fence line, now counsels others who've witnessed animal attacks. "You can't unsee something like that," he explains. The speed, the violence, the transformation from companion to predator, it changes your entire worldview. Maria Gonzalez has become an advocate for mental health support for animal care workers, recognizing that the emotional toll of the job is often ignored until tragedy strikes. Educational institutions have revolutionized their wildlife management curricula based on the Rayner case. Students now study the incident as a comprehensive example of how multiple failures compound into catastrophe. They analyze the psychology of risk normalization, the dangers of social media pressure, the importance of regulatory compliance, and the critical need for emotional distance when working with dangerous animals. Jack's story has become required reading in wildlife biology, veterinary, and zoo management programs. The financial implications of Jack's death extend far beyond his family and sanctuary. The exotic animal industry has seen insurance premiums increase by 400%, making proper safety measures not just advisable but economically necessary. Facilities that once operated on charisma and donor goodwill now require professional management and strict protocols. The romanticized image of the lion whisperer has been replaced by respect for trained professionals who maintain appropriate boundaries. Conservation efforts have actually benefited from the tragedy, as donors now understand the importance of supporting facilities that prioritize safety over spectacle. Legitimate sanctuaries have seen increased funding as the public learns to Differentiate between professional operations and dangerous amateur efforts. The Big Cat Safety Act, passed partially in response to Jack's death, has provided federal oversight that prevents unqualified individuals from acquiring dangerous animals. 1 year after the attack, a summit of wildlife experts, regulators, and sanctuary operators convened to discuss lessons. The unanimous conclusion: Jack Rayner's death, while tragic, has saved lives by serving as an unmistakable warning about the dangers of forgetting that wild animals remain wild, regardless of human intervention. The summit produced new international standards for big cat management that will influence animal welfare for generations. For those who knew Jack personally, the lessons are more intimate but equally important. Marcus Thompson, Jack's longtime friend, reflects, Jack died doing what he loved, but he didn't have to die at all. His refusal to see danger wasn't brave, it was selfish. He left behind a grieving family, traumatized witnesses, and animals that had to die or live in isolation because of his choices. Real love would have meant keeping everyone safe, including himself. The Rayner family has found meaning in tragedy by establishing the Jack Rayner Memorial Fund for Wildlife Safety. Education. The fund provides training for sanctuary workers, develops safety protocols, and supports research into human-wildlife conflict prevention. Sarah Rayner serves as director, ensuring that every dollar goes toward preventing another family from experiencing their loss. Jack's death can't be undone, she says, but it can serve as a permanent warning to others. As we conclude Jack Rayner's story, the ultimate lesson is clear. Respecting wildlife means acknowledging the insurmountable barriers between human and predator. No amount of love, dedication, or time can transform a lion into a pet. Caesar didn't fail Jack. Jack failed Caesar by putting him in an impossible position where instinct would inevitably triumph over conditioning. The tragedy wasn't that a lion acted like a lion, but that a human forgot that fundamental truth. Today, visitors to the former sanctuary site find only native Texas landscape and that simple memorial plaque. Rayner's story echoes across every wildlife facility, every classroom, every social media platform where people share content about dangerous animals. His death has become a watershed moment in human-wildlife relations, the definitive answer to whether love can conquer nature's most basic laws. Remember Jack Rayner not as the man who was killed by his own lions, but as the man whose death finally taught us what should have been obvious all along: apex predators deserve our respect, our protection, and our distance. They are not waiting to be tamed by the right person with enough love. They are perfect products of evolution, deserving to be appreciated for what they are, not what we wish they could become. Share this story not to sensationalize a tragedy, but to prevent another one. Subscribe to this channel for more critical examinations of human-wildlife interactions, because understanding these boundaries isn't just educational, it's survival. Jack Rayner loved lions more than almost anyone on Earth. He died because he loved them the wrong way. Don't let his mistake become yours. The story of Jack Rayner is over. The lessons from his death will last forever.